Hey, how's it going? It's Kevin. I'm going to show you how to tie an intruder. It's done really well for me with Great Lakes Steelhead. So to start off in the vise, I've got a 35mm Waddington shank and a Z4 intruder hook. I got a video about how to build these shanks and how I do them. So saving some time, I'm just going to go ahead and put on a nice kind of a brass eye here. Not too heavy, not too light. I hit with a little bit of Zappa Gap just to kind of lock in those eyes. So as you can see with this fly, it's a really hollow fly. It's a 2-station intruder, and it uses some materials that I found to be super effective and really kind of work well. So starting with my rear station, what I'm going to do is put the thread all the way back. At the back, I'm going to draw off a loop, and I'm going to prep this loop with some ice dub. For ice dub, the different colors of ice dub have like different material makeups. So the two that I really like for this fly are going to be the chartreuse and then also this UV pearl. So the UV pearl is a white color, but it is very, very heavy on the UV material. It's not like it's just mixed in, like all of the material has UV built into it. And on the chartreuse, it's a very similar kind of like a crinkly material. Just whenever you see some of these are like almost shredded mylar, some different types of ice dub. This one is very crinkly. So what I'm taking is almost like two even kind of chunks of here. And so then I want to blend these together. And as you pull on the ice dub and just start to, as I pull one a piece, I put it like stack on top and just kind of pull apart to really mix this, roll it around your fingers, get a good mix so you get the even mix of the green, the chartreuse in with that UV material. So it actually doesn't turn this into a different color, it just keeps it as a nice green UV. And so you can see on this, whenever it sits in the water, it just really, really glows. So working this is the base of the rear station. I've got my loop drawn out and I'm gonna go ahead and spin this in a loop. There's a lot of different ways that people go about kind of fixing their loops up here. As you can see that a lot of the materials, the fibers are trapped there. Anything from running like a bodkin or whip finisher down there. I like using one of these like fly tying. It's like a really stiff brush and just kind of start picking it out. You don't want to remove a lot of material. You can see that it is coming out, but what you're trying to do is get the materials that are trapped in there so you can make a nice brush, get another spin. All this material stay. It's kind of down to you of how much, when I was talking about too, of like controlling the size of that rear loop. I think that's gonna be probably pretty good. So as we put this on, you can see that it's gonna be kind of making all the fibers face to one direction, kind of like almost like on a stem of a feather on a hackle would be. And you're just gonna go ahead and wrap this on the rear. And as you get into wrapping the material, you just wanna keep on pressing back. Careful on this hook, it's sharp. But as you go through, just keep on pushing materials back and laying them, the wraps as you go forward. You're just laying it right next to the one. You're not going to overlap them, but you're going to lay it right next to it and keep on kind of pushing the fibers back. And you can kind of go and pick out this dubbing ball a little bit. And you can see that it made a nice little coverage there. It's nice and open. Those fibers are laying out, and it'll really, what you're trying to do is the idea of a hollow fly that it lays out underneath all those materials. So first thing I've got there is my dubbing. I think probably about 10-15 years ago, Lady Amherst tails were really popular for putting in intruders. Personally, I've moved on to using some of this flash material. For me, I really like this grizzly flashabou. And again, just like how all ice dub isn't created the same, this grizzly flashabou is not the same. This is the 7102 flashabou. It is a pink grizzly. It's a little bit stiffer. The material that they use for dyeing this is a little bit stiffer than normal flashabou, so it doesn't have like, it's not too soft, and it makes a nice, it'll make nice kind of feelers to put on there. So as I oriented this flashabou on this rear dubbing loop, I want it to kind of be in 3 areas. Left side, right side, and over the top. Don't really want any on the bottom. You'll see why whenever I show this fly in the water, but I want water to be able to come up from underneath it as it sinks. I want it to kind of open the fly up. Having materials on the bottom, that kind of impedes that, so I want to keep the bottom of the fly. This one isn't tied in the round, it's tied with a definite top and bottom, and I want to keep a lot of materials off the bottom. So I cut off a good chunk here of that flashabou, and I'm going to lay it out so it almost starts to touch right there to the eye of that stinger hook. I'll do it on the near side first. Once I've got the near side done, I've got a bunch of flashabou still left here, so I'm going to line up those tips, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the far side. And as I do this, and you can see here that I've made a loop of material that's going to just hang up off the eye there. So I'm going to make this one on the other side just about that same length, a nice gathering wrap, and lock it in right behind that dubbing loop. And so it looks a little odd now that I've got these off the front, but these are right here whenever I go and lay it back. I'm just going to go pull it straight back over the top and fasten those down. And so what I was able to do is I don't have to mess with any short sections of this flashabou. I've used the entire strand. It ends up being like the perfect length. And then when I come in here, like the side feelers are kind of locked down to standard size, but I can control the length of the flashabou off that top section by where I cut. If I cut more down in the loop, I get some long sections. If I cut in the middle, I get some nice even sections. If I cut on the other side, then I'll get the longer on the top. Like it's just a nice mix of getting in there and just kind of cutting them up so it doesn't fish like one giant brick. You get a nice mix of lengths. This stuff being a little stiffer, it's not going to into your hook, and this is kind of some material that's going to keep the softer materials on top propped up. The idea with tying these in two-station intruders is you want to keep the stiffer materials on the inside and the soft materials going out, so it kind of keeps that hollow look. So now that I've got that grizzly flashabou in, I want to put just a few little pieces of some black ostrich on here. I'm going to find some short pieces, some just you can mix it up. So at the top of the feather, you've got these really nice thin barbs. At the bottom of this feather, I've got some really bushy ones. What I'm going to try to do here is I'm going to kind of take some off the middle and not use the full length on them. So you can see a nice section of those. And I'm going to lay those out just so they kind of hit with where I was on those side feelers. I'm going to put this on the top and kind of roll it around. But this is going to try to hit almost right to the eye of that stinger hook. So I've showed this in some other videos. A great way for placing ostrich on these intruders is to not actually tie into clumps, but you take it in your left hand and you kind of roll. You can see you kind of roll these so you get all these tips where they're different lengths. And as I roll through here, I just take my thread and I just shoot it in and capture one or two of these pieces each time. And so I'm just trying to keep them on the top, just a nice even amount. Once I got them in there, I can go back, press that right up against that dubbing ball where I was at before too to keep that material lofted. So I've got a few of those little black feelers, just a little extra thing to kind of keep it going there. So before I start to advance forward, I've got one more thing I want to do on my rear station here is I'm going to use a Schlappen feather. And so I'm going to take the Schlappen feather. I only stripped the bottom portion, get the kind of that fluffy stuff off. I did leave both sides on, and I'm going to tie this in by the tip. So whenever I tie it in by the tip, that leaves the convex side, the shiny side of the feather facing me. So now I've got this feather, I'm going to advance it probably only like 4 wraps or so, but I'll kind of see based on how it fills out. Each time I make the wrap, I'm keeping the shiny side of the feather facing towards the eye, so the natural fibers are going to be that kind of floating back onto the fly and keeping that streamline effect. These won't lay down as much because they're kind of stiff, but we kind of wrap forward, always making sure that you're not doing overlaying wraps and that you're brushing back as you go. Now it's time for the advance of the body, this kind of hollow style of fly. I love this Lagartun, it's the French flat braid. I switch it up on colors. I do a lot of patterns with the gold. I do some with the silver. But this stuff, is the color that I'm using, I'm not sure the exact color, but it's the green that has a little bit of black, has a little bit of pearl mixed into it. It gives a really nice, just kind of super fishy look to it. As I go to place this down, the one thing that you'll notice a lot with like these flat braids in pieces is that as they get frayed up, these pieces get all to be a mess. So I like to pull this tight. What I'll do is I'll just make 3 wraps back here, and you can see it's to the front, and just pull it right back in as it gets set up, so that way that I know that there's no errant pieces and it's ready to wrap forward. So wrapping this stuff forward, you can do, depends on what you want it to look like, but just barely overlaying the wraps, just maybe catching a half as you move forward. Now it's time for the front station of this fly. Very similar to the rear station, just gonna be maybe a swap out of materials, but it's gonna be the same thing of a dubbing ball, some stiffer materials, some softer materials on the front, and a nice easy go at it. I use the same color combination. I've got that leftover little bit of the green and UV from before. One thing that's nice about this too is you can kind of pick and choose as you make your own blend. If I would say, hey, you know what, I really want to put a little bit more UV in there because that body's green, I can choose just to blend in UV and not actually blend in any green. So I take what's already blended, more UV, and so just have a kind of a faint green to it, but it'll really get that UV color that really pops, especially with the flash that I'm going to use on the upper wing on this. This UV it looks really great in the water. So again, like before, draw a dubbing loop. Same as before too, I'm not going to wax this one. I'm going to put a lot in here because I'm going to actually be pretty aggressive on the brush this time. It'll take a little bit more time on this station, but I'm going to have a lot of material in there. So I can throw a big group in there, and with my brushing I can control how much material actually ends up on the fly. So spin this up. As I'm doing this this brushing, what I'm really trying to do, I'm not trying to pull these outside fibers off. I'm trying to get into the inside and see what might have been caught in close to the thread and really pull those loose. I like the long ones that sit off here. Like I said, I want to be able to pull this back and have these all be inside that hollow fly. So now I think I'm ready to go back on this. You can see that I'm getting pretty close up to my my dumbbell eyes on here. I want to leave a little bit of room, but like I said with this fly, it's somewhat directional of that there's some material here on the bottom, but most of the material is going to be on the top. So I'm okay with advancing that over top of the dumbbell eyes, so I can take these wraps pretty close to the bottom of those eyes there. So you can see off the wraps there, it looks like it got cut up a little bit. The fibers are laying a little bit flat. So all it takes is a little bit with the brush, loosen up those fibers. And I'm digging that. So again, I'll show a photo here of like in the water, this just really comes alive. I feel like that's some of the best part of the fly right there. You get that in the rear and you get that up here on the front shoulder to the front station. So now for this fly also to help build up the shoulder, I'm gonna do another loop. This time I'm gonna use Arctic fox. And so I'm gonna use black, and you can see that there's 2 different types of Arctic fox you could have. There is the Arctic fox that has like this really nice long, this is like winging stuff for like flies. The stuff that's a little bit more stubbier and a little bit thicker, I like to use that for my dubbing loops. So as you go to like strip out this Arctic fox, one thing people do is they'll hold it down and they'll start to hit it with a brush and do all these things. I like to just kind of pull. I put my fingers at where I think, okay, this is the longest that I want it to be. So I'll put my fingers right there, and I know that I'm pulling off any fibers that are shorter, which is usually like that super fluffy under fur that's just not gonna really help you out. So now I've got a nice chunk. Let's see that on camera. I got a nice chunk there that's gonna be a nice length. I'm gonna do another dubbing loop that comes down here. So just like with the other material, you can see it's all clumped up and all a mess. What I'm really trying to do is I'm trying to free those fibers that might have gotten stuck up with each other. So now I've got it down to just very sparse material there. A little bit long on, I could have tied that loop a little bit higher up or put the materials in that loop a little higher up, but as you can see, I start to fold back the materials, so get them all on the one side, and I'm gonna start to move that forward through that dubbing loop. So now you can see I got some of that black in there too. And so what that's gonna help me do is that whenever the water's coming across that fly, that it's gonna keep more materials over top. We're gonna start to keep this thing open so it really gives that hollow appearance. The next step before I really put my wing is I like to put flash. And this is what I think one of the makers of the success of this fly is this good flash. And the flash that I really love across the board for all of my steelhead flies is Mirage flashabou. And so this is the 3067. And this is like a peach kind of Mirage flashabou, and it gives a really interesting color. Like you can see on the side there, kind of like peach, has a kind of like a gold tint. It shows off some blue. It looks kind of almost UV. From my experience, this one really dances in the water and you get a lot out of every strand. So I did a clump here, I don't know, maybe 10 strands. And so what I'm trying to do on this is I want to make a V. And so I'm going to put this, wrap this around my thread, and I'm not going to make it so it's like a over top vertical. It's going to be on the horizontal side, so not right down the middle, but a little bit to each side. And I'll kind of lay that out, but I want this to be just like I did my red or my pink flashabou on the back. That was 3/4, that it had the top and the two sides. This I'm trying to make almost less than half, but I want it to be really over the top, kind of the same, over the top and maybe like a eighth of a way around on each side. So to get that, take my flash, put it through in a V material, and I put it right up on top. I secure it in, and I get that with 2 wraps. So now I've got half of my material going back, I've got my other half coming in front, and as I lay this back, I'm gonna kind of move this even with my thumb here. So I'm taking my thumb and putting it out, and then that allows me to then space it out where I'm getting the coverage across. Since as you're tying this, you can see it kind of goes flat on top of those dumbbell eyes. I want to kind of cover that whole distance there on the flat on the top of the dumbbell eyes. So now that's locked in. And again, it's coming off in one full length. I'll trim this as needed on the water. And I can even go in here and I take my nippers while I'm on the water and just clear it all out. If it's, for whatever reason, if I feel it's like it's not looking right in the water, there's too much, but I'd rather put too much on the vise and adjust on the water than not have enough here and be like, man, I wish there was a little more flash in that fly. So I've got that part in there. Now it's time to come back with some of that good ostrich that I had here. And I'm looking on the length of the ostrich to make it really come almost to like right into there, kind of in that same spot where the eye was of the hook. And I actually decided to change it up a little bit. I was looking at this feather and I just didn't like the makeup of those barbs. They just looked a little, or sorry, this one looked a little bit too fat, a little bit too straight. I like these guys a little bit better. I don't know. Ostrich is one of those things you can geek out on your own. So I'm gonna take a big chunk here. More important than getting the tips lined up, for me, it's really about getting the butts lined up, so then I can do kind of that same type of application for adding material onto the fly that I use in the rear. So you can see that right there, I've got my tips all kind of ready to go there. There's one that's a little bit longer, but these now can make it so as I wrap around, I'm pulling in 3 or 4 each time. You can see I pulled some out, they were a little bit too long. So each time I'm just dropping in a few that I'm capturing. It really allows me to place them. So I want to get them on the top there. I want to get some to just come around the eyes. and that's a good amount right there. Again, coming a little bit long on some of these, so also it's nice that you can just kind of pull them right back out because I haven't set them yet. And I can adjust and say like those two, they looked a little bit long, so I'm gonna actually go in here and I'm gonna trim them to length. And now I've got them repositioned. I'll throw a couple more wraps on that, and then to lock this in before I finish up my head, I'll take my Zap-A-Gap and I'll actually run it down the thread itself. So then this will lock in all of that material that I just did. I'm going back and covering a little bit. So the great thing about this fly, again, is kind of with this unidirectional design. It's not really tied in the round. It allows water to come up from underneath it. It keeps it open the water, gives a really nice profile, that big hollow fly look, and it's proven pretty effective for me. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you have any questions, feel free to jump down in the comments section. Happy to help with anything or any suggestions or anything that wasn't super clear as I went through this. Also subscribe to my channel and check out some of these other fly tying videos I've done. Thanks.